Welcome to SportsWire, brought to you by the Garden City Telegram. I'm sports editor Brett Marshall.
And I'm Levi Burnfin. This week we'll be previewing this week's area state playoffs as we have several teams in the action Friday and Saturday. We'll also be recapping this last week's action of high school and junior college.
Levi, the end of October, first week of November, our schedule just gets really nuts, and so we tend to end up doing different things than we normally do. I headed back east, and you got the darn hatchet game, and just what happened, it was one of the craziest games they've ever had.
Yeah, it was a great game from beginning to end. Wasn't the best played game, but it was very competitive up and down, and both sides were into it, you could tell. And I was lucky to cover it, fortunate enough to cover it. And if you would have told Brian Hill before the game that they would have held Dodge City, a higher-powered offense, to 21 points, I bet he would be pretty confident they were going to come in and win that game. Instead, they lose 21-20. Their offense was never able to get going. Then they miss a couple extra points, the latter being a blocked one at the end of the game to kind of lose it for them. And it was very disappointing. They lose the whack, they lose the hatchet, and they lose out chance on the playoffs.
Well, that's a tough night all the way around for the Buffaloes. I mean, to see their season end at 7-2, while a bunch of other teams in the state playoffs have losing records.
Yeah.
So we know that this is the last year that's going to happen, and next year everybody gets seeded into the playoffs. So unfortunately, if the Buffs would have been playing next year, they would have been in a whole different situation.
Absolutely, and I think it's safe to say they're probably one of the 12 best teams in Class 6A, and they're out of the playoffs right now. I know you talked to Brian Hill after the game as well. What did he have to say about Friday night?
Well, obviously disappointed. He had 21 seniors on this year's team, and to say goodbye to them after 4 years of giving the program everything they had, I think it was really, really hard on Monday for him to say goodbye to them in the end of the season meeting with the team after school was out yesterday. It's just one of those things that happens, and I think he'd like to have a few things back, and 33 out of 34 extra points for Zeke Herrera before Friday night's game. And, I mean, that's just
he's been as sure as you can come.
Yeah, he's been a great extra point kicker and field goal kicker. Kickoffs, he usually kicks them into the end zone. And for some of those things just to kind of come unglued the other night, I think that's just kind of the hard pill to swallow for them. Well, 2 weeks ago, the Busters came up with the biggest win in junior college football, certainly this season, maybe ever.
Yeah.
And they followed it up by getting a home game against Iowa Central. What happened with the Busters to keep this train rolling in the right direction?
Yeah, a couple weeks ago, if you told me they would have won 2 in a row to win the season, that's crazy, I think. But they followed up that Butler win with a dominating win over Iowa Central, which is good to see. They were able to avoid a letdown and come out and just completely control the game from beginning to end against the Tritons. They had almost 600 yards passing. They had over 600 yards total yards. They had their best passing game of the season, their best rushing game of the season, and their defense held Iowa Central to 75 yards.
So where did this offense come from all of a sudden? I mean, I know Porter, the quarterback, is he the real key to this whole thing?
He might be, but it also on top of that is the offensive line and their improvements. They've taken the biggest stride of any position group on the team this year. They were allowing 8 sacks per game. Even against Butler, they averaged 8 sacks, allowing 8 sacks. Against Iowa Central, only 2. So that's a huge thing for them.
And that's been the group that's gotten a bad rap all year long.
Absolutely, and good thing is they're 4 freshmen. 4 of them going to come back next year. Hopefully they have a really good offensive line next year. The regular season wrapped up on Friday night as well for all the area teams. Give us a snapshot of the final week.
Well, no huge surprises. Ulysses won at Wellington and won their district in Class 4A Division I. Holcomb beat Hugoton 27-12 and wrapped up their district championship in 4A Division II. And Scott City rolled all over Cimarron 48-6, and to wrap up another district championship, 9-0 for the Beavers. Glenn O'Neill and the Beavers, he's only lost 2 regular season games in 8 years.
Yeah.
That's just insane. I mean, I don't know very many schools that have gone through this kind of a run in the regular season to only lose 2 regular season games in that kind of a stretch.
And they're primed for a deep playoff run once again.
I would think that they are, and their defense has been really, really impressive, and their offense, I think, in the big games has been good enough.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of where they're at. If Ulysses has a healthy Ian Rudzik, then I think they're in good shape. And certainly not surprising to me, Holcomb's on their late season roll after losing to both to Scott City and Ulysses. They're rolling along, and I expect them to make a deep run into 4A Division II. And if things map out, they'll face Andale in the semifinals again, but this time they get it at home. So Ingalls won their district in 8-man Division II, and Satana finished runner-up. So they're both playing this week too. So it's a big week for the area schools in football.
The reason I covered the Hatchet game on Friday, you were in Topeka covering a bunch of different things for the Garden City High School and the area schools. Give us a little recap of that.
Well, the trip started off with a boys' regionals soccer game for Garden High against Washburn Rural. Unfortunately, they came up on the short end of a 4-0 score to be eliminated from the postseason. Then last Friday, it was state volleyball in Topeka for the Garden City High School girls. They played pool play. They had 3 matches. They only went 1-2, so they didn't make the semifinals for Saturday. Ran into some really buzzsaw teams from Overland Park and Blue Valley. And
the East is always tough.
Olathe Northwest, and just some phenomenal schools. So it was a tough day for the Lady Buffs. They did beat Wichita Northwest in their final match. I think that was a nice way for them to end up their season. Saturday, it was at Rimrock Farm in Lawrence for me for covering 3A and 6A cross country. Scott City's boys and girls, the teams finished 4th. Michaela Stevens, a little sophomore, she finished 2nd in Class 3A on the girls' side. Garden City's boys, their team didn't do all that well, but Marcus Tula finished 5th. And then an hour and a half to the west of me at Wamego, we had 1A, 2A, and 4A teams. Greeley County's Lady Jackrabbits won the 4th straight state championship team title in a row.
Dynasty.
That's 7 out of 8 and 8 out of 10.
Yeah.
Pretty crazy. We were teasing Coach Cook over the weekend that they might just call it the Jackrabbit Invitational from now on. So big night, big day for them. Couldn't be happier for those girls. You run freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, and you win 4 in a row. And what a great career for those girls. And then Stanton County, Rebecca Avalar finished 2nd. South Gray's Lucas Skinner got 2nd in 2A boys. And Isaac Castro from Hugoton got 4th in the 4A boys. So as we've expected through the years, our cross-country teams and individuals do a great job. And so I think overall it was another really good day for Southwest Kansas. Well, Levi, while the Bronkbusters are on a 2-game roll, the Coffeyville Red Ravens, who come to town on Saturday, are headed in the other direction.
That's
They've
right.
been in reverse. So what are the Busters looking for in their final game of the regular season to kind of end on a positive note?
Yeah, Coffeyville has lost 3 in a row here. If just a couple of weeks ago, if you would have said that Garden City would win their last 3 games of the season, I would have called it inconceivable. There's no way they can do that against teams like Butler and Coffeyville. Now they have a legit chance to do it with Coffeyville reeling a little bit and Garden City coming on. If they're able to get this win 3 in a row to end the season, that's a big boost going into the offseason.
Well, and Coffeyville was ranked number 1 in the country just 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
My gosh. They've played Butler when they were ranked number 1 and beat them. Now they get a chance to play another team that was ranked number 1 just a couple of weeks ago. So,
and they have a legit chance to beat them too.
And a big feather in the cap if Jeff Sims' team comes out with a win.
Absolutely.
Well, Levi, the winner-go-home high school football playoffs got underway on Tuesday night, and Scott City began their march again in the playoffs with a 54-0 victory over Lions in Class 3A. Unfortunately, our Cimarron Blue Jays had their season come to an end with a 76-19 loss at Hoisington. And in 8-man Division II play, the Ingalls Bulldogs avenged their only loss of the regular season with a 74-28 triumph over Ashland on their home field. Conversely, the Santana Indians saw their season end when they lost 68-44 at Mineola. And that leads us up to Friday's regional games in 4A and 2A, where we have Ulysses hosting Abilene, Holcomb is at home against Concordia, and Hugoton travels to Colby. And in Class 2 1A, Syracuse hits the road to Oakley, and Meade is at home against Ellis. The final part of the weekend's schedule is the second round in Class 3A and 8-man. Scott City gets a home game against Norton, and Ingalls is also at home against Sharon Springs. Both of those games Saturday afternoon. That's it for this week. I'm Brett Marshall.
And I'm Levi Burnfin. You've been watching Sports Wire, a weekly talk show brought to you by the Garden City Telegram.
Catch our show every Thursday at 5 p.m. at www.gctelegram.com. And for more prep sports, go to swkprepzone.com.